Hello and welcome to the PBSB SEAC meeting for Tuesday, November 18th. We do have quorum with our friends that are online. So we do have regrets from Nicole Bucket for this evening. And so I'm calling the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. And we will now do the acknowledgement of traditional territory.
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty lands of the Michizagig Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich pre-contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe Hongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all people.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land
and continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to the original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the lands, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
Thank you very much. We're now moving on to the approval of the agenda. Number 3, we do have correspondence from Autism Ontario regarding their committee membership. That will be added to item 8.3. I'm reading my notes here very poorly. So if you could take a look at the agenda, we'll be making a motion that the Special Education Advisory Committee approves the agenda as presented. Can I have a mover, Trustee Alice, and a seconder, Jennifer? Are there any questions or additions? All in favor? The agenda is adopted. Number 4, declarations of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have an issue in that regard? Seeing none, we will move on. And we are now at the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which was October 14th, and it feels like it was a blink of an eye ago. So if for those people who have reviewed the minutes, or if you are just reviewing them quickly now, may I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented, and then we'll have any discussion. Trustee Benjamin and Trustee Clark. So are there any amendments, questions, or other issues about the minutes?
No.
Jen, you're really good at reading all this. Okay, if Jen's okay with the minutes, it has been thoroughly vetted. So all in favor. So the minutes are adopted from October 14th, and we are now at delegations of public questions, which it appears we have none. And we're already at number 7, which is the reports from officials and staff. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague here.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Good evening, SEAC members. Thank you for your continued partnership and unwavering commitment to supporting our exceptional learners. Your advocacy and insights remain vital as we work together to uphold the goals outlined in our special education plan. We remain deeply committed to ensuring that every student receives the support that they need to thrive. Tonight, I'm pleased to share with you a video that captures the focus and learning from our recent special education conference that I highlighted during our last meeting.
This September, the Peel District School Board proudly hosted a system-wide special education conference, welcoming principals and special education staff from every school across the district. This full-day learning opportunity was grounded in our shared commitment to the multi-year strategic plan, with a focus on equity, inclusion, and excellence for all students. The focus of the conference centered around several key themes: maintaining high expectations for all learners.
The journey starts in kindergarten in having high expectations for the students that we serve. A belief in what they can do instead of a focus on what they cannot.
I've really been re-energized by all of the speakers here today in terms of maintaining our high expectations for our exceptional learners and really creating spaces for them where they can be successful.
Ensuring the integrity and alignment of the instructional program through implementation.
This session today has really allowed me is to deepen my own working knowledge on not only just the workbook tool and how to collect data and to know the processes, but more importantly is how am I going to monitor that when I'm in schools, when I'm in and out of the classrooms.
And strengthening relationships with families, caregivers, and community partners.
Even the emails that I tend to send out when I'm in these learning opportunities, it's really being shaped by understanding the role that I have, the perspective that I have, and is adding to the joy that I have learning in this capacity and serving families in the ways that we are supposed to.
This conference reaffirmed what we know to be true, that when we lead with integrity, collaboration, commitment, and care, we create the conditions where all students and the adults who support them can thrive.
We are also pleased to share an update on our communication class pilot, now in its second year. In collaboration with our research department, we will be sending out another survey to families, students, and staff to gather feedback. This data, along with our ongoing observations and discussions with educators and families, will inform our next steps. Our goal is to make thoughtful, evidence-informed decisions about how to best support students across to Tier 3 literacy interventions, ensuring that every learner has the opportunity to succeed. To allow SEAC members the opportunity to provide overarching guidance as our department updates operating procedures, we'd like to invite your feedback on how to best structure this discussion. Recognizing the preference for sharing feedback is in person, we want to know if members would prefer to schedule a separate time and date dedicated to this conversation, or would we be open to adding an hour at the start of an upcoming meeting? Including it within the regular meeting agenda would significantly extend the meeting length and may impact accessibility for those joining online. I would love to hear input after my report is done and your preferred format. For this month, I'm pleased to share an update on the exciting work underway in the special equipment allocation formula component of our department, under the amazing leadership of Catherine McNeil and the CRTs, whose leadership continues to play a vital role in supporting students' success and equitable access to learning. Our SEA resource teachers have been very active this fall, focusing on building connections with schools and learning hubs. Their priority has been to ensure that students not only have the SEA technology allocated to them, but also feel confident using it to access the curriculum. Just as importantly, they are working directly with special education educators to model best practices in assistive technology so that all students benefit from these inclusive tools and strategies. This has been a powerful way to normalize assistive technology as something that supports good teaching, not just specialized instruction. Another exciting development is the purchase of Book Creator licenses for schools. Book Creator is a versatile digital platform that allows students to design and publish multimedia books that include text, images, videos, and audio. It's fully accessible on multiple devices and web browsers, making it a powerful tool for inclusive education. What makes Book Creator particularly transformative is how easily it allows students of all abilities to express their voices, creating, narrating, and sharing their own stories in ways that build confidence and pride in learning. Teachers are already using it to help students produce digital portfolios, social stories, and classroom publications that truly reflect their individuality and creativity. Apparently, Zeri had something to say. Sorry about that. We have also begun an exciting pilot project with Holland Bloor Kids Rehabilitation Hospital at Park Home School, exploring the use of brain-computer interface (BCI) technology. In simple terms, BCI captures and translates brain signals into commands that can control devices. For students with complex physical needs who may not be able to use traditional input methods, this opens new possibilities for communication and access to the curriculum. It's an inspiring example of how innovation can directly enhance inclusion and dignity for learners who have historically faced barriers to participation. Finally, our department has taken a leadership role in professional learning focused on the effective use of prompting when leveraging artificial intelligence tools. These sessions help special education staff learn how to phrase questions and commands to generate AR-supported content that better meets the unique needs of their students, whether that's adapting instructional materials, simplifying text, or creating individualized supports. Across all of these initiatives, our goal remains clear: to empower students through access, independence, and technology-enabled learning, while building the capacity of educators to create classrooms where every learner can thrive. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Would you like us to make a motion before we go to the conversation?
Absolutely.
Could we have a motion that the SEAC approves the superintendent's oral report as presented? So we have trustee Clark and trustee Benjamin as mover and seconder, and any discussion in terms of questions, comments. Trustee.
Thank you, Chair. Is this where you want the feedback for consultation at this point?
Through you, Chair. Yes, absolutely, please.
I'll start. Happy to support the will of the group, whatever our members think is best. But I think it's probably just easier for this table to have it come as an hour early or an hour late to committee. I'm just thinking historically when we've asked for feedback, that we had a couple special sessions where it's hard for folks to attend. They've got their regular life. At least this committee is already in people's calendars. But again, if the group feels they'd rather have this done in a different way, say that. Happy to support whatever the team wants.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
Regarding what Trustee Alves just said, I'm also for it, but considering the fact that some of us come from very far away, are we going to have it in the winter, like in December, January, or maybe when the weather is? Because I'm looking at Anne, she drives a long distance to come here. So, if you're extending it by 1 hour, I'm okay with it, but just putting this forward. And I have another query later on.
Through your Chair, feedback received. We do want timely feedback and have to, want SEAC input before we go through the updating, and they are time stamped and when we have to produce them back. But we would certainly be considerate of certainly the distances people drive and the weather.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And through your Chair, one more. It's not a question. It's just that. Where is that? The book creator licenses that you talked about, is it for all students or is it only for students who are in special needs?
Yes, for you, Chair. I'm going to ask coordinating Vice Principal Casman to answer that question.
Through you, Chair, we purchase licenses for all learning hubs and students with special education needs.
Okay.
So the educators have the licenses, and then they can add as many students as they want to their account, so that students can create books and share them. That's wonderful.
Thank you. That's great.
And for you, Chair, I've seen some of the books created, and it's absolutely amazing how, when using technologies, students can express themselves.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. On the subject of new exciting technology, this like how much, you don't have to go into. I mean, I would love to go into a long because I like this type of stuff. But quickly, how does it work, and how did we acquire it, and is this something that they are going to continue to innovate? Like all new technology, and I totally support it. I also think with new technology, sometimes we'd be worried to take a chance on one particular, system and supplier. Maybe somebody new might come along, but sometimes it might be better for us to just stick with what we have before, anyway. Yeah. So how does it work, and how do we get it?
So through you, Chair, I do want to say that this is through the innovation again of this department. So I will get coordinating Vice Principal Casman to share, but it was done very much in partnership and with consent from families. So that is really important that we were communicating with families and receiving both verbal and written consent throughout the process. But I'm going to ask coordinating Vice Principal Casman to share.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, we saw the technology first at an assisted technology conference last year through Holland Bloorview occupational therapists. And we were very excited at its potential and to support students that would have no other way of communicating. So I have a little bit of a write-up. Hopefully it will help me. So BCI technology gives students who are very who have a very limited movement, a new way to take part in activities and express themselves. It works by picking up natural electric signals in the brain, produces when a person focuses, relaxes, or pays attention. These signals are translated to the device through the software into simple actions on a computer. So turning on your favorite song. So for a student that would never be able to do that independently, we are helping them turn on their favorite song. So students in Peel, this means that they can use brain activity to do things that were previously out of reach, such as playing a game, choosing a song, or interacting with digital tools. So students who cannot reliably speak, gesture, or use switches can still make a choice, show interest, and engage with others in a meaningful way. So BCI does not read thoughts or store private information. It simply detects general patterns that show up that the student's concentrating or responding. So it's just like a little bit of a helmet that they use.
Yeah, so it's kind of like I think we used to call it like I had a friend at East when I worked for summer at Eastern Civil Society where I met my wife incidentally. I think the proper term was a bliss board. She used to call it her Ouija board. It was so this is kind of like that, but it's the user has to figure out how it works for them. So it's very cool. That's very cool. Mm-hmm.
Any further questions or comments? That was great. It was very helpful. Nothing about BCI from you, nothing?
Yeah. How many students do you have using BCI right now?
Through you, Chair, we have 2. So we're up at Park Home right now. And we're hoping to get it out. But right now it's a lot of learning for everybody, for the educational assistants, for the resource teachers, for all of us. So we're hoping to get it out to other schools very soon.
That's great.
Thank you.
Cool. Wanted to see.
Do you have any other questions or comments, either here or our online participants? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting, wow, you are all very fast. The superintendent's report, that's all in favor that is adopted. So we are now on to 7.2, the financials. Oh, this should be. Sorry?
Did you get enough feedback with plans?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think we heard that maybe an hour before would be ideal, considered of the weather. And so we can give verbal feedback. If SEAC would agree.
I mean, we could even push it back in special cases just to make room for I'd be okay with that rather than have it earlier. But
An additional meeting, it sounds like either
before or after.
Sorry,
that's why we did the vice chair. That's right. So through you, we'll work with the chair and the vice chair on picking the dates that we work for the SEAC committee. Thank you.
So now we are back to 7.2 of the special education financials 25-26.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I would like to ask Controller Tanya Charles to please present this report on behalf of the board.
Thank you, Andrew, Chair. So this will be an oral report, and certainly we can share the slides afterwards. So you can see the agenda. So we're going to really talk about the funding that we receive for special education. We'll talk about the business cases that went forward for 25-26, which is this current year. We'll look at the special education expenses and then look at our 5-year trends. So we'll start off by looking at the special education funding. First of all, all of these come from the ministry. And if you will look on the screen, there are, you'll see the first one is the Special Education Fund. So the Special Education Fund has 4 components, and I'll talk about it a little bit more when we get on to the next slide. But on this slide, you can certainly see that it makes up the majority of the funding for special education. Below that, you will see the support for student fund. So that is a fund it's flexible funding that was provided through the ministry as part of collective bargaining. It allows boards to work with their respective employee groups to determine the area of greatest need. So in this case, you can see that over the years, we've gone from using about 4.4 of that for special education to most recently about 6.5 million of that going to special education. Next, you will see that we have deferred special education funding, and that is generally made up of any funds that were not used in prior years are in the past were allowed to be used for exactly the same reason in the next year. And in the past, there were 4 elements to the deferrals, so they were kind of 4 buckets that we were keeping track of. There was this the regular special education deferral, there was SEAC deferral, there was the ABA training, and the ASSD funding. So these were separate buckets, and any unused amounts would have been carried over to be used for the same purpose as the fund in the subsequent year. As of 24-25, the funding is still provided separately, but any unused funds help to balance the overall SPEC expenses. So as of 24-25, we will have used all our deferred revenues, and you can see therefore that for 25-26, there is no further deferred funds to be used in this current year. Next, you will see Priorities and Partnership Fund, COVID, and that is only appearing in 2021-22. And that was supplementary funding that boards received during COVID. And this was really additional funding that boards received to help kids transition back to school in the learning gap that was apparent after COVID. And so subsequently, that funding was discontinued by the ministry. After that, you will see funding for self-contained classes. So within the normal core ed funding, so so there's the core ed funding and then there's other funds, but core ed funding is where we have for the normal classes in terms of regular classes. And in those classes, there is a component that is allocated to self-contained classes, and it's a calculation the ministry does. So that line depicts how much of our regular funding goes towards special education. Lastly, you will see the census update transition supports. In this year, again, this is the funding that was received in 24-25, and it was money that the ministry gave, acknowledging or enabling boards to put that towards areas of greatest need. In our case, we applied it to special education, and it allowed us to hire some additional EAs. As you can see, that funding was not received for this year, 25-26. So when you look at overall funding that we put towards special education in 25-26, right now there's only 3 components. There's the special education fund, the supports for student fund, and the People Foundation component for a total of about $274 million. You will also notice that there was a significant increase in funding in 23-24, with some funding being somewhat reduced in 24-25. And then kind of continuing on a more sort of normal pattern thereafter as an increase. Just as a reminder, in 23-24, more specifically in February 2024, Bill 124 was repealed. And so during that time, there was about 3 years worth of salary increases and retros that were both funded and paid. So that caused a significant blip there. But as a reminder, that was kind of what I call in and out. So again, we were funded for those retro payments, but then of course we had to pay them out based on collective agreements. Going specifically to the special education fund that was mentioned on the previous slide, this itself has 4 components. The first component is the per pupil allocation, and this is based very directly on our enrollment and our enrollment based on the different grade levels. And next, you will have the differentiated needs allocation, and this fund is calculated using a complicated formula with multiple components. It's intended to try to address the variation between school boards with respect to students with special education needs by using components such as measures of variability as well as the statistical prediction model. For the statistical prediction model component, the ministry has now, or is now in its second year of using the 2021 census. So what that means is that when they calculated this part of the allocation, they're using 3/5 of the 2006 census, which is the older census, and 2/5 of the 2021 census. So they're using really a phased approach, and this is in line with the ministry never wanting to be go too quickly, because again, obviously that impacts boards in terms of changing formula. So they usually transition it over a period of 5 years. The next allocation is called the complex supports allocation. So this one is intended for specialized supports for students with complex special education needs. Within here, you have the special incidents portion for students that need 2 full-time staff to address health and or safety needs for themselves or others at the school. So in the past, the SIP amount was based on specific per student submissions. However, during COVID, the ministry went to a simplified model to reduce the administrative burden on boards. Unfortunately, the ministry has continued to use this approach, which does not recognize the growing needs in Peel, as a calculation uses a sort of pre-COVID data and then a standard yearly increase. So it hasn't really helped to reflect our current needs. Within this complex supports allocation, there's also a piece that it relates to the Education and Community Partnership Program called the ECPP, and that it deals with educational needs for students in custody or at detention facilities such as Roy McMurtry. And within this allocation as well is components for behavior expertise component, as well as funds to hire applied behavior analysis expertise professionals. Lastly, within the SPEC fund is a specialized equipment allocation, which is for the purchase of equipment to support students with special education needs. And this component itself is also has 3 components. One is a base amount for each school board. There's also a per pupil amount within here, as well as a claim-based component. So these are the 4 pieces that make up the special education fund. And as you can see, there has been a significant increase from where we ended 2024 to what our budget is for 25-26. So mainly, if you think about it, this is due to the fact that, with year to year, we've had increase in collective agreements. So the salary increases are about overall about 2.5 to 3%. And that increase there is a little bit even below that. And that's partly because we also have an enrollment decline. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the components within the formulas are enrollment based. So really there hasn't been much increase in our funding. Moving to more into the 25-26 business cases that were approved that were related to special education. So every year the board considers the needs of the system, and based on funding determines which business cases can move forward. And for 25-26, you can see that from all the business cases presented, 52% of those approved related to special education, as brought forward by our coordinating superintendent of special education, Claudine. So, and those business cases related to 100 EAs, as well as individualized education resource teachers. So a total of 6.4 million. So the next slide shows the sort of visual breakdown of the special education expenses by type. As you can see, direct staffing makes up about 95%. And so what we mean by direct staffing, it would be at the school or directly working with the students. And if you add both the direct and indirect staff, then you can see that the number goes up by 98%. So really 98% of the costs that we are looking at, that 320 million, is staff related. The next slide, it's really the same expenses, but they're just shown in a different way. And they're shown, but this is by area. And you can see in this visual that 92% is within the classroom, within the schools. And if you add the component that relates to children in care, which would be at Roy McMurtry, that would be, goes up to 94%. So that's quite significant. The next slide is very busy. It's really the same, but it's so apologies for that. But I know the committee does like to see the detail, and certainly we will share this with you afterwards. But this slide really depicts the 320 million in a lot more detail, and I'm just going to orientate you a little bit on the slide. And so I talked about direct or indirect expenses. So the top portion is the direct expenses and the bottom portion is the indirect. On the left is sort of the description of the type of expense. The first column is what we call full-time equivalents, or basically head count per se. But again, the reason it's called full-time equivalents is because they could be 2.5 to make a whole. The next column is central or costs. So again, these can also be direct or indirect. However, they are generally managed centrally. But you can see that there's components that are both at the school level, which would be considered direct, as well as those that would be indirect. The next column is SEAC costs, so related to SEAC equipment and getting them out to the kids. The fourth column is classroom or in school, and that's where the bulk of the costs are, a total of 293 million. And it's broken up at the various types of FTE. And the last column before the total is the ECBP, and that's for the children in care. And then the furthest column that's in blue is the total. So just to give you a sense of what it is. So as you can see, I'll just, the very top, you can see classroom teachers that are considered specifically spec ed are 912, and our EAs are 2,242 as we enter, from a budget perspective. And then I won't go through all the other ones, but certainly you'll have that as a reference. So this slide basically kind of puts both pieces together, and it really shows the revenue or our funding against our expenses over a 5-year span. As you can see, the funding growth over the 5 years has been 11.3%, while our expense growth has been 19.1%. So this means that the shortfall in special education funding continues to grow, while our funding is being reduced due to enrollment decline. Because again, some of that growth also is related to obviously required increases due to collective agreements. So it's not really increases in funding that we can necessarily use for new types of expenses. So as a reminder, the ministry expects all boards to have a balanced budget, which means our revenue should match our expenses. Since the ministry is the main source of our funding, approximately 98% of our funding comes from the ministry. We continue to look to them to help us address those gaps, because certainly it is growing. I think that, yes, that was the last slide. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you for that. The question, first of all, we should make a motion to accept the report as presented. Trustee Clark, secondary trustee Benjamin, and then discussion, questions, comments. Or is everybody just feeling very sad right now in terms of the funding shortfall? Trustee Benjamin?
Through you, Chair, regarding your special allocation for complex needs, I think you mentioned Roy McMurtry. Did you mention that?
Through you, Chair, ECBPS.
Okay, so I don't know if this is related to it, but I was informed by somebody that now you're going to have a separate section to admit girls to Roy McMurtry. Is that true? Or so far as it only male or students?
Through you, Chair, that's something I'd have to investigate. That's not something that we have heard, but certainly that's something that we can look into and bring back to you.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing you mentioned is, the falling enrollment. So do we see a what do you call it? Is it also reflected in a falling enrollment and the number of students with special needs, kind of?
Through each year. So we're still looking at analysis on that because, that there's a difference between falling enrollment and the need that is required. So the needs are growing and we know that. However, enrollment it's two different things, two different pressures, the type of need as well as the enrollments in terms of that. So I think we're looking into the numbers and trying to figure out sort of the pressures that we face.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Go back to the first slide. Look at that. Mark, is that easy? Sure. Mark, can you put up the first slide, please?
Yeah.
Hang on one second. Second. That is
The
the third one down.
Next one. Keep going.
Yeah.
I think
So-
there's a, yeah.
My question is, so we have a shortfall. These are all our special education funding. What I don't understand is there's a per pupil amount for every student, correct?
Through each year, that's correct.
So do we include that per pupil funding in our special education costs for our special education kids?
Through each year. So the line that says fund for self-contained classes, that's directly from the core ed funding. So there's a calculation that is actually ministry based from that per pupil funding that we bring in. So that would be the 19 million.
Okay, so that's basically all the kids in the contained class times their per pupil amount.
Yes.
So that's totally okay. So
Yeah.
students that are in mainstream classes, does a portion of their per pupil get rolled into the special budget? What is the special education?
Through each year. So not exactly, because obviously the cost for their teacher, if they're in the mainstream, would be part of the normal allocation that we use. But any additional support would be through the other mechanisms, through the other funds.
Okay. All right. The one thing that concerns me a lot, and I hear it a lot at the budget meetings, and is that we always keep talking about taking money away from other kids to help special education. We need to stop that kind of discussion, and we're just saying, we got to find the money somewhere, and we're taking it away from other kids. So it's something I think we need to, as a board, talk about a little bit differently. I hear it often when they have budget discussions. We're watching online. It's like, oh, we're stealing from the other kids in order to support. So I was just trying to understand if, some of that funding really actually does exist for our special education. It's just in the wrong bucket. So that's what I was just trying to understand. But regardless, I think that comment needs to kind of go away. Understand we do have a deficit, but we need to serve all our students, right? And talking about taking from one to serve another is not helpful.
Thanks, Jen. Anybody else? Yes, trustee.
Yeah, okay. There was one other slide. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it involved, I think there was financial support for EAs that's no longer there.
Through each year, that was the first slide. The same slide.
Okay, because, and I remember, so does that mean our hope of hiring those EAs, I think we did this over the last budget to cover the shortfall in EAs, that we aren't going to be able to do that this time because we only got the 100 EAs, right? From the business cases. I didn't turn my thing on, sorry.
Through each year. So I think potentially you may be referring to a couple lines. So one of the lines is called support for student fund. So in that line, it used to be called local priorities. I think now it's called SSF. That is allocated to various employee groups, including the EA group would be one of them, where there's a certain amount of allocation provided. So some of that is continuing. The other line that you may be referring to is the census update transition support. So that was done only this year. If you notice, I want to say this year, 24-25. My budget just finished this year. So in 24-25, we did receive 2.2 million with no specific criteria other than it was to be used for areas of pressure. And we actually didn't get it during the budget cycle. Sometimes it was a TPA that we kind of got mid-year, and this is where we chose to allocate it because that was our greatest need. So because we didn't receive it at the time, it actually didn't impact our budget process because unfortunately TPA sometimes come in the middle of the cycle, but it do help release some pressures when they come, and the more we can apply it to different needs.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. Other questions or comments? My question would first of all be that, so what we're seeing is that there's a response in the budget to declining enrollment overall, but that does not respond to increasing need.
Yeah.
Percentage-wise in any way. Right. So even though we may have somewhat declining enrollment overall, we still have significant, if not more, special education resource need, which is not being reflected in the funding we're receiving. Is that correct?
Karisha, that's correct. And I'm sure Coordinating Superintendent Staccato can speak to, especially the SIP component where, there's evidence where we would have a lot more things to submit to the ministry in terms of data, because in the past it was done per student and we would have to submit that information. Right now they're not doing it from that methodology, so we definitely know that if we were allowed to submit based on the past criteria, we would get more funding. So I think there's some changes in how they do some calculations that has impacted us, and that would be clear visibility where we have a greater need, but based on how the formula is working, it's not allowing us to gain additional funding to support.
Okay, so that's obviously something we need to get around.
Well, so through you, Chair, we've been actively advocating both through our board of trustees and through centralized departments and meetings with ministry officials, advocating for responsive funding, special assistance portion funding, because through our department and coordinating principal, Earl Jacket does submit numbers every year, but again, it's just data collection at this point and hasn't reflected a change in receiving that funding line.
Pardon me, go ahead.
Future, I missed the moment of decided to step out for a family emergency, but the comment around our budget. So every year we that I've been a trustee, and I can't speak for the board because I'm nor the chair or the vice chair, but in my experience, we've dipped into what is our reserve fund, which is effectively a savings account. We're allowed to write at the request and pleasure of the minister of the day to use said funding for said things. And if the minister of the day approves it, we can use it. It is not something that is long-term sustainable because it's a dwindling savings account, but it is something that we have done to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. And this year, when we had asked the ministry if that would be possible, it's my understanding that we were told no. The government would like all boards to run a balanced budget based on what you have, and that's not to say that using reserve funding wouldn't be a balanced budget. It would be, for lack of a better word, topping up. So to my colleague Ms. Knight's comments about how we refer to the reallocation of funds or the creative accounting to help boost funding for special education, there may be a misuse of terminology, but the fact is true. We have to find tens of millions of dollars to top up, for lack of a better word, the funding that goes to our special education programming and students that have identified learning exceptionalities because of a shortfall that the government is acutely aware of. On multiple occasions, the board, myself, my colleagues at the table, my colleagues at the trustees of all have written letters to the government to ask for funding and to make changes to the funding formula. And we're often told that we, the government, have never given more money to boards ever. And while that may be true, I can also attest that I've never spent more money at the grocery store and gotten less for it than I have today. And that is true amongst many things that unfortunately is true in education as well.
Thank you for that. Is it possible to show, because you missed the last slide, did you not? Can we show the last slide for Trustee Elves so that we can, because he had to step out. But I think the the concern is as well, but what I did want to ask around that, obviously, there's virtually, I think it's or perhaps the one with that one. Okay. The funding shortfall.
Yep.
And I think that there's also the next one, actually indicates.
Sure, can I ask a question of staff?
Yeah, please.
Through you, Chair. I'm not sure if staff are prepared to answer this question. I totally understand if they're not. I know we don't have COO Jasper Gill here with us, but are staff able to provide for the committee just high level how much the board of trustees had, for lack of a better word, topped up the funding for SPEC Ed this year?
Through you, Chair. I'm not sure about the question so the shortfall for 25-26 would have been the 46 million. So we would have had to find those funds either through savings elsewhere in our budget because we had to have a balanced budget. So this year we did not use our reserves and we had to balance. So this year we would have been absorbing the 46 million through readjusting budgets elsewhere.
Thank you. And so just for clarity for folks who are listening online, the Peel District School Board did in fact find this $46 million, which was a shortfall from where we were previously.
Through you, Chair, I'm not sure the term of shortfall when we were previously. So in the 24-25, we ended the year with a $37 million shortfall. So our shortfall has grown. So we've been carrying a shortfall over the years that's been increasing.
Thank you. So the way I understood it from the conversations that I had with our chief operations officer is that, this is funding that we had to pull from other areas of the board to ensure sustainment for SEAC.
Chair, that's correct.
Yeah. And it's been the government knows?
Yeah, I think they're up.
Right, and I guess the question that I had as well is in terms of the direct staff, because it appears that there's very little other than funding for staffing. And is that specific to resource teachers or is it broader than that?
Through you, Chair, is the question what are the direct staff?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, and I apologize because it was a very small slide. So if we can just go back here. So at the very top, you will see classroom teachers or home instruction teachers. That's about 912. Below that, you will see EAs, about 2,200 EAs. And then they have psychoeducational consultants. You have social workers, speech language pathologist, occupational therapist, teaching applied behavioral analysis facilitators, lunchroom supervisors, travel assistants, SEA educational assistants, SEA occupational therapist, and SEA technician. So those would be what we consider the direct.
Right. But they're very specific. Yeah, so they're specific.
Yes, through each area. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions, comments? Yeah, go ahead.
So the 900 classroom teachers, those are all contained in the hubs?
Through Chair. No, those would not all be in the hubs.
So can you explain to me where they come from? Where the 900 come from?
Through Chair, it's also special education department heads in secondary schools, in school support teachers in elementary schools, staff like that as well, which are in every single school.
Okay. And sorry, on a second note, I was just curious about the so you got 54% of the special projects or whatever. Does that mean there was only 12 million spent on special projects across the board?
Through you, Chair, you talk about business cases?
Business case, yes.
Through you, Chair. So in terms of business cases, that would be correct. So the business cases are every year we're going into the budget process. Every department or every area brings forward the needs in the area at the specific time due to change and other things. And what we do is we remove sort of past year's business cases. So again, let's say in this year we approved a one-time business case that might be removed, but next year there might be something else that comes forward that is more pressing. So these business cases come forward to the Budget Development Committee as well as the trustees, and they look at and see what they can approve and what we can afford to approve within our budget. budget. And sometimes, as Trustee Al says, we are able to use reserves, so sometimes we can approve more. In other years, we're not able to approve. So the 12 million that were approved were probably I don't know off the top, I would say maybe 25% of those total that were presented. So this year we could not approve very many because we had to balance. Whereas in others, if we were able to use reserves, we could potentially approve more. So.
You know what the other thing, what else was approved? Just curious.
I believe there was some transportation that was approved. And again, that was because there was very specific ministry funding that was allocated to support regional programs. So that I think was the biggest additional piece that was approved. I can't remember off the top of the other ones, but that would have been the biggest other piece that was approved. And that was because there was specific funding for it.
Other questions or comments? What would be the best way for community organizations and parents to help advocate around?
Through you, Chair, I think writing a SEAC letter would be important. I think we've shared examples of other SEAC letters that from other regions across have shared, but we would always welcome the advocacy and support to have fair funding.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments before we vote to adopt? All in favor of adopting this presentation? Thank you very much. That is moved. So we are now moving on to 7.3, the Special Education Programming Workbook, a tool for goal setting, monitoring, and accountability.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The Special Education Programming Workbook has been referenced in my oral report in the past. You saw it highlighted, of course, through the video that all principals have been shared, and I'm going to ask coordinating principal Ursula Sargent to please share the report on behalf of the board.
All right, I have the pleasure of giving you a high-level overview of a tool that's been created to support educators, administrators, and superintendents who work with and oversee programming for students with exceptionalities and those in learning hubs and those that access alternate curriculum in the mainstream. All right, so the premise behind the workbook, it is based on 6 domains of effective practice, and we'll take a few minutes to dive into those 6 domains. The workbook is aligned with school improvement and equity planning, as well as our board's multi-year strategic plan. So this is tiny, but these are, we're gonna get an overview. There's a short video that we're gonna watch that was created. It's about 5 minutes in length, and it walks us through the actual workbook interface and highlights these domains. So these domains are sort of best practices that we've sort of put together for schools to use as building blocks. And each of the domains is connected to our school improvement and equity planning. And then also it is connected to our board's multi-year strategic plan. And then it covers many of the standards included in our special education plan. So the expectations that we have, so the workbook was launched, and I'll give you sort of a timeline, but the workbook was shared with staff that attended our special education conference this year in September. Currently, we are in the initial phase, and it's sort of focused on building familiarity within those 6 domains of effective practice. School leadership teams are currently working on selecting 1 or 2 key domains to set school-wide goals. And this is connected to the school improvement plans that exist in all of our schools. Priority is given to Learning Hub 6, 8, 10, 10R, 25 and one classes. And using a team approach, and you'll see what the interface looks like. Teams work through and document steps outlined in the programming workbook, and they set goals, they identify, they plan next steps, and then superintendents will monitor the creation and implementation of the goals. So this is where our timeline is at. So the year before, we had a few schools pilot the workbook. The workbook was launched and shared this past September at our special education conference. Currently, we're in the system-wide implementation stage, where schools are focusing on one or two domains. Some schools are at full implementation. That would have been part of the pilot. And then we hope to launch our educator workbook in February and March, and then sort of system monitoring based on timeline. And we're going to sort of watch a quick video. It's about 5 minutes in length that takes us through what this interface looks like.
This is a video overview of the Special Education Programming Workbook. Under Departments, you are able to click on the Special Education Department. And from here, you are able to see the 3 priorities of the Special Education Department. When you scroll down on this page, you are able to see Special Education Programming Workbook. This is also a place where you're able to see all of the updated news and memos. You are also able to see any upcoming events and professional development. When we click on the Special Education Programming Workbook, we access the Special Education Programming Workbook site. Once you are at this particular page, you are also able to click on Exceptionalities, Placements, and Services and scroll down to Special Education Programming Workbook. Here you will see each of the 6 domains listed. This may be another quick way for you to access the various domains. There is also another way that you can access is by going to the My Site page, clicking and hovering over departments, scrolling down until you see the Special Education Department Workbook. You can also access it through Supporting All Learners. So within the Special Education Department, if you find yourself on the Supporting All Learners page, you will also see a link here to the Special Education Programming Workbook. There are many ways for users to access the Special Education Workbook support materials. When you access this page, you are always able to click on School Workbook to access the actual workbook itself. You can access the 6 domains here. You can read frequently asked questions, and you can access a user guide. To set the context for the Special Education Programming Workbook, you will see that this is a tool for goal setting, monitoring, and accountability for students with exceptionalities in learning hubs and mainstream classes. Using this tool, educators, administrators, and superintendents will be able to oversee programming and ensure that the programming has been designed and implemented to uphold high standards which are outlined in the 6 domains. The Special Education Programming Workbook aligns with the multi-year strategic plan in Peel District School Board, as well as the School Improvement and Equity Planning. When you scroll down this page, you will see that there is the School Workbook. There are also the 6 domains which you can access by clicking on each of these icons. When you are using this as a school team, you may wish to review all of the 6 domains and then decide to hone in on one particular area. Each of the domains follows the same type of layout, setting the context, considerations for program planning, add-a-click resources, professional learning supports, and something to watch.
On each of these pages, you will see that your school name is here, your logo, as well as your principal's name, superintendent, and family of schools. Within this workbook, keep in mind that only one person can edit at a time in order for the work to be saved. SEAC goals will be automatically generated in the special education programming workbook from the SEAC site. Once you click on a domain, you will see that there is a setting the context area, connection to SEAP and multi-year strategic plan, as well as concrete school connections. As you scroll down the page, you will notice that there are drop-down menus. By clicking on the down arrow, you are able to expand these areas. For example, under guiding questions for administrators, you're able to see a variety of questions. Under data collection, you are able to actually click on upload the information that your school team has collected, triangulated data, for example. Under goal setting, you are able to access this entry box where you are able to provide information about your school's targeted intentional instructional strategies which address the identified area of need. When we scroll down, there are professional actions. There's also the area for monitoring for accountability. Finally, there is an area at the bottom for superintendent feedback. If we click on another domain, for example, domain 3, knowing our learners and assessment, we will see that each domain follows the same pattern. It is important to note that at the top of each domain, there is the letter I at the top right-hand corner. Click on that letter I, and you will be able to access the Special Education Programming Workbook resources. We hope that you find this overview of the Special Education Programming Workbook and how to best access the tools within the workbook supportive for your programming.
Does that complete the presentation?
No, just we have one last
Okay,
slide.
great. Thank you.
We're almost there. So our continued commitment, so you got a high level overview of the workbook and then the domains. So we're committed to sort of supporting the ongoing professional learning. Claudine is working with the superintendents on she's creating some guiding questions for our superintendents so that they have them when they sort of do walkthroughs in some of the programs that we've highlighted. We're going to be sort of offering ongoing professional learning, setting up sort of learning hub networks, which we had mentioned. I believe I presented that in the last report. Support from our IERTs, and then access to central staff to support schools with the implementation of the workbook. And that is it. And I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much. So first, can we have a motion to adopt the special education programming workbook presentation? Thank you very much. So we would have our trustee Alex and Benjamin. Any discussion?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Just a question. On the workbook, I saw the name of the superintendent, the principal. What happens when you click those names? Does their contact information appear?
I don't believe so. Sorry, through you, Chair.
No, this is an internal facing document only, but when we were asked to see it, we created a video so that SEAC and other members could see it. It's automatically flooded, so it speaks to our other SharePoint systems. They speak to each other. So no, it's not external facing to the public. This is an internal facing document just for confidentiality of student information.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Walk me through an example of a SIEP goal, how that turns into a goal in a classroom. Is it for all classrooms? Just kind of an actual example of what this would look like.
So through you, SEAC is the process of school improvement and equity planning for whole schools.
Right.
And what we were finding is that SEAC goals as they were generated did not reflect the Learning Hub classrooms goals in general, especially those students on alternative programs. So for example, you might have a SEAC goal to improve literacy for students at a certain level. And some students, again, with what they were working on with targeted interventions, for those working on alternative literacy goals, for example, functional literacy, or comprehensive literacy through the work of Dr. Erla Jacket would not be reflected in that goal. So they might pick that same, curriculum, which is domain 4, and create a goal around comprehensive literacy or functional literacy in the classroom. So the goals would be aligned, but not identical in their instruction or their assessment.
Yeah, that's helpful. Just trying to understand. These SEAC goals also had a lot more to do with, like, I thought when we first talked about them, like culture in the school, inclusion, that kind of thing. So how does that?
So through you, Chair, there are two SEAC goals. We both have both achievement-based SEAC goals in both literacy and numeracy, and a SEAC goal in the sense of belonging. And often those goals can transfer across all classrooms, right? We want all students in all classrooms to have a sense of belonging and identity affirming spaces and things like that. So often the sense of belonging goal are transferable to all students in the school, which would make sense. Okay, so their identity and experience, they need to be included and valued. But when we're seeing that for the achievement part of the goals. So this is really focused more on students with alternative curriculums.
That makes sense, because I was really confused as to why we did different goals for inclusion, that kind of thing, for the hub versus the rest of the school. So that helps a lot. You were going to bring back some SEAC goals from schools and how they're going with that. Is that still a plan?
Through you, yes. Superintendent Chavarro, I think, is scheduled to come in February and is sharing that. I think I'll have to look at our agenda for the exact one, so don't quote me on it, please. But yes, it is future planned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments? Anybody on that online? Okay, if there are none, thank you very much for the presentation. All in favor? Thank you very much. Then we'd be moving on to 7.4, the Accessibility Program Update 2025.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I would like to invite Superintendent Craig Kaslik along with Candace Namath. Just location shift.
Hey, thank you. And through you, Chair Mallett, I'd like to introduce or reintroduce to the SEAC committee, Candace Namath, to my left here, who is the manager of abilities, wellness, and attendance. She's here to share, she has returned here to share updates and next steps with the multi-year accessibility plan, 2025 to 2028 with the SEAC committee tonight. So through you, Chair, I'd like to pass the microphone over to my colleague, Candace Namath.
Thank you. Through your chair, so can I have sorry about that. So I'll do a quick review of the accessibility program structure. We have the Executive Council Director's Office, and then under that would be the Accessibility Advisory Committee, which is comprised of our senior leaders in various departments across the board. And then reporting into the Advisory Committee would be the Accessibility Working Group Committee, which is more comprised of the operational teams that are carrying out the activities of the accessibility plan. Additionally, would be the disability interest groups, including SEAC and employee resource groups. So they're very right there. That's like, oh, okay, sorry. And this is just a listing of the advisory committee groups that are involved. And as you can see, there's a wide variety, wide range from the student support side to the staffing and employee side as well. In the accessibility working committee, again, there are operational teams, and this does change. We have added to it depending on the emerging barriers and issues that we've identified and the changes in the operational structures at PDSB. And so for the multi-year accessibility plan of 2025 to 2028, tonight I'm going to be reviewing some of the objectives, and it'll be centered around examining each of the 4 barrier categories: architectural, physical barriers, attitudinal awareness barriers, and technological barriers, as well as the projects that we have going on or anticipated or plan to do regarding organizational policies, procedures, and practices. And finally, I'll be talking about the monitoring outcomes and progress, and how we'll be taking everything taking accountability for the plan and the actions that we're taking, as well as ensuring that we are transparent in the progress that we are engaging in. So for the first one, architectural and physical barriers, we continue to work on the accessibility ratings in schools. There is a report every year that talks about that shows our progress in ensuring our schools are accessible. Obviously, they are also bound by funding for our older schools. Secondly, we're ensuring that new buildings are compliant with the new and revised AOD requirements as those change. And thirdly, one of the things that we wanted to add in and focus on was, instead of just looking at the AODA requirements and meeting those, we are looking at considering in new building design where we can add elements that exceed the AODA requirements. So we're having ongoing conversations with the team on that. For attitudinal awareness and barriers, the HR team it will be updating the new hire accessibility training modules, and we'll be looking at how we can implement regular training. So so we're not just reviewing that with new hires. It'll be an ongoing training program and update. We'll also be implementing accessibility identification training for new leaders. And finally, one of our other areas of focus will be reviewing current accessibility training for teachers to deliver accessible curriculum for students. And especially as student needs change and technology changes and new technology emerges, we certainly want to make sure that we are delivering programs for students and removing as many barriers as we can. From a technology perspective, as the current software we have, continues to have updates and upgrades, we are making sure that we're putting practices in place to ensure that they remain accessible and compatible with any assistive devices. As you heard from some of the other presentations from Superintendent Zapata earlier and others, AI is an emerging technology that is constantly changing at a very quick pace. So we are looking at leveraging AI technology to ensure that and to create more inclusive learning environments. From an organizational policy, procedure, and practice perspective, the accessibility policy will be under review, and we've started. We will be also including an industry scan of best practices as we update our accessibility policy. Updating procurement practices to ensure our vendors offer accessible services and products is an area of focus and has been underway this past year. And from the employment services review that was undertaken in 2023, there are a number of recommendations that would further our work in the accessibility area. And that would include workplace equity inclusion, hiring practices, and staff accommodations. So there's a couple of our policies that have already been implemented and passed, and we have some other ones that are pending approval. Okay. And from the last meeting, SEAC meeting that was out, we did hear that we really needed to be transparent and also ensure that we are holding ourselves accountable to achieving the plans and the goals that we set out. So we have implemented an annual accessibility report. Previously, we've had pieces of these annual reports, but we want to ensure that this has a more robust review of the year. So we will be collecting information and gathering that in an annual report, on an annual report at the end of the year to ensure that we are keeping track of our goals and making sure we're achieving what we were set out to do. Once these reports are completed, they will be shared externally and internally. The annual reports, again, will document all projects that we've completed in the year and any work that's in progress. And we'll be going into the calendar year. And the idea is that having these robust reports with details as to what has happened, what barriers we've identified in the previous years, it would help inform our future multi-year accessibility plans, and ensure that we have a more timely approach to creating the next plan, and as well as being able to provide that feedback on what barriers we need to do more work on, and what has worked for us in the past. Okay. So again, next steps are once the MYAP is reviewed and approved by the Executive Council, we will certainly share that with SEAC and post it on our internal and external sites, as well as share with our other disability interest groups. The annual accessibility report will also be posted and shared with SEAC once completed. And that's essentially all I have for my reports. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much. So first off, we have a motion that the accessibility program update be received. Trustee Clark and Trustee Benjamin, thank you very much. And discussion.
You knew that was coming.
I did.
Hi, thank you for that report. It's been a long time to hear something like this. These are all things we've been asking for. First question, obviously, is when should I expect to see the annual report? When will this MYAP be available to the public? Because online right now we have the 2022 on there and no annual report since 2022. So that would be my first question. Is when.
And through your chair, once it is approved through the Executive Council, we will be able to share the MYAP. And just to be clear, that we have been completing a lot of the work, especially in the last 2 years. It's just in terms of collecting all the information and putting the report. As you can see, that there's a number of different departments that we wanted to work through to ensure that the report met and really answered and addressed a lot of the feedback that you provided to me last time. So we went back, we worked that, and I do acknowledge that it's taken a while to get us there, but it will be available hopefully in the new year. As for the annual accessibility report, that is currently being compiled together in terms of, and it should be ready in the new year, early in the new year. And in terms of reporting it back to you, I guess I'll look to Claudine to schedule that in.
Through you, Chair, yes, I can consult with the chair and co-chair about when that would best be done once we verified that we have the reports in hand.
Possibility for that early in the new year. And just to be clear, like part of the AOD requirement is to have one of these every year. So one of these reports, it's available to the public. So that's why I'm a little antsy over the whole thing for the last few years. Wanted to ask about your feedback form that got launched, I believe, last fall, the new feedback process where you go through for accessibility issues. How is that going? How many reports do we have? How many are completed? That kind of thing.
Through your chair, just to clarify, there was, I think, a couple of different feedback forms. There was the general one that was posted for anybody to respond to. And then there was the other one that was specifically about physical barriers in the school. So if you could just clarify which one you were.
Let's start with the general one. Where is it hosted, first of all?
Through you share the forms and the feedback form, it is listed on the PDSB website. And so I believe each school site, there is an accessibility link there. that goes to the feedback form,
Okay,
as well as internally on our SharePoint.
on your SharePoint, but what about the public?
So yes, the external facing school sites, I do believe that there is a link on each of the school sites as well as the main PDSB board site.
Okay, and have you got anything in the past 2 years from that?
We have, and this is, for clarification, it's not housed by my department. I will have to check into the department that manages that. And I can come back with a report on that.
Yeah, I'd like to understand whether the public is able to get their needs understood, because I know I've tried, there's an online accessibility email address that seems to go into nowhere. I've tried a couple of times to submit things there, and so I don't know if it's just not updated. So maybe if the next time you come back, you can let us know that there is definitely a link and that it is active and that there is someone monitoring it, and then what's coming in from the public and how is it being addressed. Because same question about the internal one, how many requests have you had and where are we on managing it?
And through you, Chair, there are two forms internally. One is filled out by the principals and the schools when they identify a barrier. And so I would have to defer to Claudine to verify that information. But the other additional form, we do not actually get a lot of inquiries, mainly because of our internal staff accommodation practices. We have been addressing a lot of those barriers through that piece, which is where my department manages.
Through you, Chair, the one report that Candace was sharing is run in coordination with my department through our occupational therapy supervisor and with the facilities. And so they run reports weekly and, kind of categorize what the need is, the level of urgency, how is there an impact to learning or accessibility, and then they prioritize those obviously with financial considerations as well. But those are run weekly.
Is that the kind of thing that, along with the accessibility of the schools, the improvements in the accessibility of schools in the past, yearly we would get a list of all the schools and what their ratings were. Is that something that we could have back again?
Yeah, so that report will be included in the full annual report. So yes, you will be getting that.
And in addition, would there be some kind of report on we've had this many requests, we've met this many, that kind of thing? We've had public requests, we've had requests from principals, sort of, how are we doing on our requests, sort of? Is that something that can be included in the report?
Through your chair, I'll have to take that back to see if that could be included in this formal report, but certainly we'd be able to answer the questions as to how many accessibility requests are being made through our department.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
I'll add that one to the motion action log. I feel like that's an easier way to do it than waiting for Candace to come back in the new year, so I can probably answer that quickly.
The procurement, the work you're doing with procurement on making sure our vendors are accessible, does that include vendors that manage our school trips and our in-school activities?
Through you, Chair, I understand it does, and the practices are including those ones, but in terms of details to speak to it, I have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to be interested in that as a follow-up, Claudine, also. James.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was writing.
Yeah, so understanding how in procurement, the trips and the in-class events are being handled. And I guess, how are you actually vetting? What is the process for vetting your vendors to make sure they're accessible?
Yeah, I can certainly come back with that information. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Through you, Chair, I'll add that back to Candace's report and not motion action logs.
Yes.
I'm going to keep them separate. If that's okay.
Sorry, somebody else could go while we go over my head.
That's okay. No. Are there other questions or comments about the presentation?
Okay.
Okay, seeing that, Jen, you got your back on.
So.
We're relying on you for this one.
So you mentioned exceeding the AODA in places when you're building new. Give me an example of what that looks like.
Through you, Chair, again, this is an ongoing conversation as to where, I'm not certainly the expert in this, but for example, and again, I don't know building code, but if there was an AODA requirement on a building code, but through our experience of what building changes we had to make after a building was complete, we are exploring that conversation and reporting back from the planning accommodation team and the new build team to see where we can make adjustments ahead of time while the building is being built, instead of relying on post-construction fixes. So in terms of specific examples, I will have to get back to you on that.
But you're trying to build sort of a database that would help you when you're trying to put these things together somewhere where anyone can access it, not just a conversation between people to say.
Yeah, so exactly. So we're exploring a conversation about what areas, what items that this would be applicable for, and in terms of cost savings, where we would be able to save on post-construction costs if we were to do it during the new build.
Right.
So it is still early in the conversations, but we are trying to identify what are the key barriers and gaps post-construction so that we can see what the options are to address it ahead of time.
I'm going to move on to training. I'm a little disappointed here that we're working on training more than just the first time. That we don't typically, we just train them the first time and then that's it when it comes to accessibility and attitude and all that kind of thing. So it's a one and done right now. But we're working to make that more than once. Did I understand that right?
Yes, through you, Chair. Typically what we found is that we do the onboarding training and we have that. But again, to improve our our mindset on accessibility, we are looking at where we can continue the training now. Training is there's a lot of need for different types of training, whether it's health and safety, and there's a number of areas in my area would be very interested in improving. But these are one of the areas where we do feel that if we were able to continuously train people and have refresher training more than just at the onboarding, that would be helpful in building awareness.
And do you keep record?
You Chair, can I add to the trainer aspect? So if you noticed in the workbook, the first two domains would really function towards serving the attitudinal and the physical aspects of training both staff and principals in schools around making concrete decisions. And a lot of the guiding questions in domain 1, which is operational decisions, and domain 2, which is the physical environment, are guided through an AODA lens.
Okay.
So they have and all of the resources that are in there. And again, that's not one of the ones we really quickly went through, but a lot of that is embedded in that, and that will be reflected in our part of the report as well.
Okay. All right.
So it's not a one and done.
Good. That's kind of disappointing one here. Yeah. And then records of training, we're required to keep record of all the training we've done for accessibility and attitudinal awareness and that kind of thing. Do we have that data?
Through Chair, we do have data again on the onboarding. And if I could just clarify, the training that I was talking about was more like overall employee training and not specific to EAs or special education. It would be the generic training that we do at onboarding, and we recognize there is a need for general staff training on an ongoing basis. And in terms of record keeping, we do again keep records of the initial onboarding training, but certainly keeping records of ongoing training would also be something that we would be including as well.
I skip over. Actually, first of all, training volunteers. I know back 5 or 6 years ago, we developed a training brochure for when we had volunteers, parents, stuff like that into the schools that talked about how to work with someone with a disability. That kind of some tips and tricks. Does that still exist? Or
I will just
get
back to you on that and look into that.
Okay.
Yes.
So what are we doing with volunteers when it comes to AODA training? Like if a parent comes in and is working on a field trip, how are they being trained?
I will have to get back to you on that. I'm not off the top of my head. I don't know. I have to look into that.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, the last one, and then I'll be quiet. And you have to hear from me later too. I'm sorry.
There's no need to apologize.
I love that you're talking about how you're trying to ensure that any upgrades in software are compatible with our devices that our students are using. How are you making sure that happens when there's so many different types of sensible devices kids are using. How are you managing that? Is that you, Kat?
Yeah, through you, Chair, we're lucky that Superintendent Bernadette Smith is here. She's the Superintendent of Innovation. So she will take that question.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Chair. And that's a whole presentation that we can come and share with you as well. Absolutely. So we have an Information Security and Privacy Committee that's made up of various representation from different departments, including the LTSS, Learning Technology Support Services, which is our IT department, as well as ourselves, the Innovation, Artificial Intelligence, and Pathways Department that we're called now. And other different staff, including our privacy officer and legal counsel, and we sit and we review vendors as well as many different apps and software that are presented to us as wanting to be used in schools. And so we have a very strict process that schools need to follow in order to first recommend that they actually use that software, or now also the presenter policy, where schools need to follow, principals will need to follow a certain process in order to identify who is appropriate, what kind of material that they're going to be using, and so on. And even in terms of accessibility and resources that are secure, maintain the confidentiality of our students and all of that, our governance officers right now are actually working on adding an addendum to that presenter policy in order to ensure that we do have again, a lot of guidelines to look at any software that, for instance, if you invite a presenter in to talk to a class, now many of them will come with software or apps that they say, okay, students are going to be going on this. Well, we have to ensure that we have accessibility for those apps and the software, and that it's reasonable and meaningful and purposeful for use with students. So those processes do exist, and we do mobilize that through a lot of training. So we have administrator training, we have lead training, which are for new administrators that are coming into those roles. As well, our education ed tech resource teachers are constantly doing all sorts of trainings within family of schools meetings, at staff meetings, and if principals want them to come in to work with individual teachers. And this is beyond also learning hubs. So across the entire system, we have those built in. And of course, our websites provide, internal websites provide many different resources for educators and your students as well.
I guess I was more interested in how you're ensuring that all students can access those software. So blind, low vision, if they're using an AAC device, if they, all the different, you're using a joystick or they're using different things. That's what I thought that meant, is that you were really looking into our software to make sure that every student can access it.
Absolutely, and that is part of the process for review of those the software through an AODA lens. Okay. And so the criteria that's used to review, including all of the fine print for that software, is all looked at very closely, and it's quite an arduous process in order to get whatever resources, including Book Reader that I heard earlier, on our approved list. So once it's on that approved list, then we do review each year. And we've been very good at keeping up with those reviews as well, because there was some lag over the past few years, and now we're up to date with that. And so we will continue on that process. Yeah.
Thank you. My last comment with me is that I didn't see any students with disabilities anywhere on your list of people you're consulting with. Students in your board. So that I think could be an improvement.
And thank you, well, yeah, absolutely. Let's look at that one.
And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for the presentation. If we have all, we've exercised at this point, all of the questions that we need to. And thank you for representing on that. All in favor of receiving that report? Thank you very much. That was really helpful. And now we are on to regional learning choice programs. Feasibility studies 7.5.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I would like to reintroduce Superintendent Bernadette Smith, who is the Superintendent of Innovation, AI, and Pathways.
Hello, and through you, Chair, thank you. Our commitment to equity, innovation, and student success is at the heart of everything that we do. The regional learning choice programs, or RLCP as we call them, response we are sharing tonight reflects our ongoing efforts to ensure that all students, including those with exceptionalities, have fair and meaningful access to specialized learning opportunities. This work is guided by our board's strategic priorities and our shared belief in the potential of every child. I want to acknowledge the collaborative spirit that has brought us here and thank our staff, families, and community partners for their dedication and insights. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce Tamara Camel, our coordinating principal of student success and pathways. And online, we have with us our manager of research department, Lynn Hollingshead. Tamara here will present the findings of the RLCP feasibility study and respond to the motion raised at SEAC, sharing recommendations and next steps to further support equitable access for our students. The agenda here that we're going to be working through is a review of that motion, relevant data, interpretation of that data. So we'll provide some more insights with regards to that. Next steps and actions that we're taking, success measures, and we will take questions at the end. So please join me now. Tam.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. We'll start with the actual motion I've presented. I will read through the motion, and it's here. So be resolved that staff be directed to prepare a report including the number of students with identified learning exceptionalities who have applied to RLCPs over the past 4 years and are gained entry into the program, the proportion of those applicants who meet eligible thresholds and or offered admission, an analysis of the feasibility and potential impacts, logistical, legal, and equitable related of reserving a percentage of RLCP seats for students with exceptionalities who meet admission criteria, a comparison of the current admission structure for equity deserving groups and how a similar model would be reasonably adopted for students with exceptionalities, recommendations on next steps to ensure equitable access for students with learning exceptionalities to RLCPs aligned with the board's equity and inclusion goals. So basically, the motion directed staff to report on RLCP admissions for students with exceptionalities, focusing on application rates, eligibility, admissions, and equitable impacts. The goal is to develop recommendations for more equitable access to RLCPs for these students. This responds to concerns about representation and aligns with board equity and inclusion goals. You have access to the full report. I'll be highlighting the main points and how that helps us reach our recommendations. So you can see here through this table, and I'll go through it with you. Students with exceptionalities, excluding gifted, there were 64 applicants. Students identified as gifted, there were 195 applicants. The general applicant pool was 3,046 applicants. This is for last year, the 24-25 year. Exceptionalities, excluding gifted, and 93% of students with exceptionalities not excluding gifted were offered admission. Gifted were 84% offered admission, and the general pool is 85% offered admission. The data presented in this report is from the 2024 RLCP application cycle. Now, our original intent was to analyze 5 years of historical data for a more comprehensive perspective. However, with the transition to Power Schools, we lost access to previous year's RLCP application data. We requested the historical data from the LTSS team, but due to their current workload, they have not been able to fulfill this request to date. Waiting for this historical data would have delayed the report further. So we proceeded with the most recent and available data to ensure timely delivery. While this is a limitation, we believe that access to historical data would likely reinforce the same conclusions reached in this report. The trends observed in the 2024 cycle, particularly the equitability admissions rates for students with exceptionalities and the need to increase application rates, are consistent with our understanding of the RLCP process. Therefore, the recommended next steps and actions remain valid and necessary, regardless of the time frame analyzed. So here are the key findings from there. Just over 2% of applicants with exceptionalities, just over 2% of applicants had exceptionalities applied for regional learning choice program. Eligible students with exceptionalities were offered admission at an equal or higher rate. So basically, our findings indicate that the main issue is not selection bias, but low application rates among students with exceptionalities. All right, adding to that, our findings indicate that the admission process is equitable for students with exceptionalities. The main barrier is low application rates, not bias in selection. Increasing awareness and support for these students and their families is critical. Recommendations include targeted outreach, collaboration with special education staff and guidance counselors, and accessible resources. So our next steps and actions are targeted outreach to students with exceptionalities and their families. Collaborate with special education and guidance departments to identify and support potential applicants, as well as provide accessible resources. Monthly office hours and information sessions will be held to promote RLC opportunities and support students with IEPs. These actions aim to increase awareness and encourage applications. We've already begun implementing these recommendations in our New to the World guidance session, 17 training and guidance office hours. We consistently share messaging that all students are encouraged to apply to RLCPs. We have enhanced this language by specifically encouraging students with IEPs to apply. Additionally, we are directing guidance counselors, special education monitors, and student success teachers to actively reach out and support students with IEPs in the application process for the RLCPs. Finding our success measures. Success will be measured by an increase in applications from students with non-gifted IEPs. We will monitor feedback and engagement in outreach activities. We will also track year-over-year application data, and analyze participation trends. The Equity Accountability Report Card will continue to track this data as we are looking for proportional representation in RLCPs. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that. If we can have a motion to receive that presentation. Thank you, trustees Benjamin and Clark. And then move to discussion. I'm sorry, I was got to start saying that. Yeah, went down. You may.
Okay,
go.
So I'm a little, first of all, we weren't looking for, I just had a quick chat with Trustee Ellis before he left. He had a family emergency. He was more looking for the data so that he could use that to put together a report and take it to committee. So that appreciate the ideas and what should be done. I think he's great to take the data and with that. I just a couple of comments. So 2% of applicants. I'm assuming that's kids with students with an IEP. That's how you identify it?
Students with an IEP that are not gifted. So
they're not
we did the designation.
Okay. So based on our census in 2023, 31.2% of students consider themselves with a disability. And I believe our IEPs are probably around there, somewhere 30% of our students. So we would expect something more like a 30%.
Absolutely.
Right? And we're down at 2%. Okay. When the original report identified that there was a discrepancy, an underrepresentation, we didn't have the data. It wasn't about whether we were getting picked in the lottery. It was that they were underrepresented, period. They weren't applying, right? They weren't getting into the programs. This is a similar situation for our kids as well. In that case, there was a two-pronged approach. There was the approach that we're going to work just like what you talked about doing for kids, as well as offering them the ability to get in without going through the lottery as long as they were met the requirement. So I'm kind of confused as to why that wouldn't be offered to our students as well.
Through you, Chair. So what the data shows is that the lottery is not the issue. That's what the data is showing. It's showing that the issue is the number of kids applying. The data is showing that the kids that have an IEP that is non-gifted they're getting in at the same rate as their non-IEP cohorts. So it's not that there's less kids getting in, it's that less are applying. So if we increase the number of kids applying, that number of kids getting in will go up based on the data that we have.
Okay. My point is though, you didn't have that data in the past when you made the decision. It's like, I don't think anyone suspected that your lottery was rigged, right? And I hope it wasn't back 4 years ago either, right? That wasn't the issue, or what, like, maybe I'm misinterpreting, but in the past there was the lottery, and I don't think that was the issue. The issue is that they're not being encouraged, they're not applying, maybe they're not meeting the requirements. That's another thing we'll talk about in a minute. So although I think Trustee Alves and Jazzy are going to take this further, I just wanted to kind of put those points out there because I think it's a differentiation in how we're treating students. And then that brings me to the amount that actually meet the requirements. And I just want to make sure. So we're at 66% for our students on IEPs, 77%, I think it was, for students without IEPs, and 90 with gifted. So I think that's something we need to look into. Are our students getting the accommodations they need to be successful in these programs, things like that. So digging into that number and what does that mean is probably something we need to look at. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I think, like I said, Trustee Alves and Jazzy are planning to take this further. I don't know if that means we don't accept this report as it stands, or
we're seeking this motion to receive, acknowledging that we've heard the presentation, right?
okay. And there's no motion needed or anything at this point to say that there's okay. All right, so that's all I had to say.
I just put up my hands to myself.
No, you have to make sure you can see it.
I need such a vacation. Oh my gosh. So in terms of this, the lack of application is staggering.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart. I have diagnosed ADHD. Both my children are in the PDSB system and do. And to me, I don't think that our students with IEPs see themselves as being able to get in. And is that what the interpretation is that it is?
So through you, I think that's what our data is showing. It's that the kids don't think they belong, which is wrong.
Yeah.
Every child belongs in RLCPs, and that's something that we are working hard. We've already started, as I said in the presentation. We are talking to guidance counselors, to success teachers, special ed, about encouraging students with IEPs to apply, because the limited data that we have, it is very limited data. It's such a small number. The kids that are getting in are being successful. It's just that very few are getting in because they're not applying. So we're saying we need to do work on allowing them to apply and allowing them to get in, because once they're in, all of the same, all of the things that are in their IEPs are still in place when they're in a regional program. None of that changes.
Right.
It's just, again, a lot of them believe that it's not for them, which is wrong. And we have to work on making that better.
Thank you.
And just to add through you, Chair, we are doing a great deal of work. We recognize that this is where the gap is, to market these programs, to help people understand what students who have IEPs, teachers, parents who may not even know these programs exist and are available for their children, especially those who have IEPs. So we're doing a great deal of work now to start to mobilize information about these programs through various campaigns. And that's something that we're very committed to. And we recognize that it's, again, just to reiterate, it's about the fact that we do not have students with IEPs applying. So we need to increase that number. And so we're committed to really watching that as well, monitoring that beyond the equity accountability report card that's annual. And so as a team, we've been sitting down and talking about, what do we need to action in order to get that information out?
Thank you. And what is, in terms of the students that apply, oh, good, this one.
Yes, thanks, Mark.
With the identification of giftedness, what's the percentage of students that are identified with giftedness in the general population, like just a spitball. That, you know, because we're saying about 31% have IEPs of some sort.
Through you, Chair, I don't think I've ever run that number. So you're asking for the percentages of students that have been identified as gifted as an overall percentage of the school population?
Yeah. Because if we know,
I'm gonna add that to the motion log, right?
We know that based on the test, the percentages that we accept, like you have to have a 95, you have to be in the 95th percentile.
Yes, but that's done annually. I've never run the total number, I don't think.
because I'm just gonna guess that
and
it's
that's
probably
what I'm thinking.
significantly less than just students with an IEP.
Yeah.
And yet, there's double the, so they see themselves as easily accessing, like, yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, I have a similar question. This whole exceptionality. So there are several high percentage of gifted children who also have IEP for other ADHD and other issues. So how does that complexity get captured, and also how do you distinguish between a child with an IEP for gifted versus something else, and when it's combined, is there any mechanism in your study to kind of distinguish between those groups? It's very complex.
So we thank you, through chair. So we didn't actually do intersectionalities of that such, because it does get very complex. So we just, what we did was we said, if they are identified as gifted, plus, they're gifted. If they are not identified as gifted, we put them in as a non-gifted IEP. And that's where we drew the line. We didn't actually do the the others, just because it would have gotten too complex for us to get the numbers together.
Right. So that situation then is there no accountability for that subsection of students?
We can take that back and we can do, it would be some research involved. So we're saying that if we look at different, if they're gifted plus something else, what is their likelihood of getting in? At this point, it would be the ones who are considered gifted. But looking at the others, I'm not sure if Lynn wants to help with this one or not. I'm going to pass it to her. There you go, Lynn. It's on you.
There she is. Hi, Lynn.
Good evening, through you, Chair. Just note that the number of students who have multiple exceptionalities, including giftedness, is usually quite small. And so if we were to look at out of the 195, there might be one or two. And so then it would be difficult to draw conclusions with that low number. And that this is why the intersectionality analysis wasn't done, because with 1 year of data, the counts were really tiny to start to break out into smaller groups and then be able to draw valid conclusions about what it meant.
Does that help?
Somewhat. It still doesn't address.
Because I think that one of the things that and I just want to make sure I'm interpreting this correctly, but if we're just looking at it from a layperson's perspective, it does seem that overall gifted students are there's probably a smaller percentage than, for example, students with just IEPs, but oftentimes gifted students obviously see themselves as better, like good candidates for this. Right, whereas, so it's like it really is making sure that our students with other challenges can envision themselves even applying.
And through chair, and that's why when we talked about the multi-year data, it would likely come to the same conclusion that it's not about the lottery, it's about the number of kids applying. We have to work on that one first, and it's amounted. We should be at 30%, and we're not. And so that's what we need to work on.
Any other questions or comments? Please go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Okay, you touched on it a little bit, but I'd like to dig in a little bit more. Okay, second here. It's in there. When we're looking at how to reach out, do we have a methodology of, what kind of, do we need do you believe we would need a motion to create a fulsome, policy in order to, get this going? Or is this something we're kind of, letting it develop organically among the staff at the school level?
Good question through you, Chair. So what we've realized with RLCPs, the number one factor to get you to apply are staff. Staff tapping on kids and saying, this is a good thing, you should try this out. And that's why starting this year, we've already implemented this. My department under my department, we have 2 monthly meetings. One for our guidance counselors and one for the Pathways Committee. So the guidance counselor meeting is a monthly office hours, where it's all guidance counselors in the board, grades 7 through 12, meet with our head of guidance for the board, and they go over upcoming things that are happening. And in that, we've been every month talking about encouraging students with IEPs to apply. We've started that already. We also have monthly Pathways meetings. This is new this year. So the Pathways meetings is all spec ed, student success teachers, guidance counselors, and administrators. It's optional to attend, but like the last one we had 133 people from the secondary panel there, and same messaging was given out of we need to encourage more of our students with IEPs to apply to these programs. And so that's been our thing this year, and we want to see what impact that has on the number of applicants.
And through you, Chair, I do want to speak to the conversations that have already happened. I do not question the commitment of trying to improve the outreach and improve these numbers on behalf of the board. So I don't. That. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, you got the amount of work that you guys are doing, it's astounding. So thank you so much.
Trustee Benjamin. Yeah, thank you. And through which you're continuing with this conversation on advocacy and promoting programs among this particular group. So recently, I go through the PE news and school news and so on, and I was very intrigued by this community resource fair at Britannia Public School for special needs families, which was organized by Transition Navigator Resource Teacher. So is this one of the programs that, or what you're talking about?
Yeah, so through you, Chair, that is different than the RLCP. Transition Navigator Resource Teachers run through my department. We have 4, one in every quadrant, and they're running resource fairs to share with families. And we just had another amazing event, after school event, for families at what was the school, George? Churchill Meadows. I should remember this. But those are kind of outreach into alternative programming, both within and outside of the board, because we want to be in partnership with community all the time. And often our Transition Navigator resource teachers have community connections. They're the ones that last year got opportunities for workplace placements for some students and are continuing to work to do that. So different than RLCP, but the RLCP team also will present to our individual education resource teachers to make sure that during student review meetings and in conversations with parents, because we have access to parents more than her team does, that we'll be sharing those opportunities as well. So they'll be presenting to our team as well.
So this is for the quadrant. That whole quadrant, they are invited to these kind of fairs, or is it only to this individual school?
No, the whole quadrant.
Okay,
always.
Thank you.
Yes, we just always have a host school. Okay. We try to pick a school that's most successful for most families.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions that we have?
No.
Oh, okay.
And again, I'm sure that you were surprised by this data as we are. And there's certainly no commentary that you aren't doing. It's just that I do think that certainly just in terms of my own personal experience, I do think that students with exceptionalities tend to not envision themselves being capable or being accepted into these programs, and this is really seems to bear that out. But certainly, thank you very much for letting us know about this. It's been very helpful. Are there other questions or comments? Yes.
I think part of that is that we're not supporting them in believing that. And I'm a little disappointed because one of the, from the last report, we found this out directly from the document that was written on policy 64. We're going to have the promotion of equity and opportunity and access for students through equitable, transparent, and inclusive education practices that are designed to address disproportionalities and increased opportunities for students that have historically been marginalized. In order to achieve these goals, the admissions criteria, application process, and timelines will be published by the PDSB in school. The criteria and procedure will promote the board's values and equity, inclusion, and human rights. So this should already be going on. And you're talking about how we're just letting people know that we should tell our kids with IEPs to apply. It's upsetting because they belong in that group as well. They should have been feeling like they belonged long before now. And we wrote it down. We said that's what we're doing. And now it takes this to say, okay, we need to do that. So.
Are there any other comments or questions? And then we need to table something for.
We just need to receive.
Right, so we're receiving this, but we do know that Lucas and John.
Yeah, through you, Chair, Trustee Alves had to leave, as shared by our co-chair. But he has communicated through governance that he will be reaching out directly to the team with questions of clarification and further feedback. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. So all in favor? Thank you. Received, and thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
And we are on to, oh, and it is 9. That's why it feels like 9.
Yes.
And the darkness.
Yes.
And so we're on to number 8, communications for action or receipt.
Oh,
is that what we're on?
Yes, we are.
I just missed something.
No, you're good.
So correspondence from the Durham District School Board to the Minister of Education regarding timing of release of core education funding documents on school boards. That seems very specific.
Through you, Chair, it was just a letter that was sent that we were asked to include in the agenda. It also speaks to the reference around, advocacy that can happen through SEAC. So just an example that we're sharing. So it's just for us to proceed today.
So that's within the agenda.
It's already there.
It's already there. Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion that this document be received as presented in the agenda. So that would be Trustee Benjamin and Jen Knight. And all in favor? That is received. So we are now on the correspondence from the Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing children regarding the resignation of a SEAC member. Did you want to
do it first and I'll do it discussion?
Okay, so well, I guess may I have a motion that the resignation of the representative for the Voice for the Hard of Hearing children be received, and that is so that is Trustee Clark and Trustee Benjamin. So can we now have a discussion? Oh yeah, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I do want to take an opportunity on behalf of the board to acknowledge the outstanding commitment of Shelley Foster. It kind of brings a tear to my eye. From the time that I've started on SEAC, even to before when I would come and make presentation. Shelley has always been one of the strongest advocates in this committee for over 20 years, serving for a really long period of time as chair. And she brought so much to community. She brought so much to these discussions. She was always student-centered and had a very kind and humorous way of leading meetings, which I know we all appreciate. There has been a request on behalf of Voice for SEAC to consider that we do not impose their 3 absence rule and remove them from SEAC committee. I would ask for that to be strongly considered. I think that Voice brings a commitment to students who are deaf and hard of hearing. It's a community agency that we need on this committee. We need their voice. So I would ask for deep consideration and respect for Shelley's strong commitment. to the students in this board that we consider that request and offer them till the end of the year to find a suitable replacement. Thank you.
Questions or comments? Please go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. With that request, may I suggest a motion to authorize their absence again to hold that seat?
So can we do a motion to authorize the absence of the Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children? And okay, so we have Trustee Clark and Jennifer Knight, and that we would extend their seeking a new representative until the end of the year. And I believe that all in favor for that, we can do that, yes?
Just a quick discussion first.
Pardon me?
Just a quick question first.
Yes.
Is there any implication for us to be able to continue doing business by having another empty seat?
We are actively working on,
no, but will they be out of the quorum? Like, does it impact our quorum?
no.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
But I would just like to thank Shelley because she's awesome. And absolutely. And she, I believe when I talked to her, when she decided to step aside as chair, and then I believe she told me that she thought she'd been chair for 12 years, that is an incredibly long time. So, and we're hoping at some point to be able to thank her personally by bringing her into a meeting. But the fact that she was able to do this, you have to pay attention the whole time you're in the meeting when you're chair. So I do really want to thank her, and it is like I told her it was totally understandable that she needed to move on to other things as well. And we're hoping that they can find another representative to be able to bring that perspective to the committee, but hopefully we'll be able to, have her in and have a cake or something.
Yes,
Because 12 years is a long time. Yes. Yep. Please try
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Could we, this may not need to be on the agenda, but maybe we could write her a letter or something from the board, just like thanking her. Because, I've only been here for 3 years, but I mean.
Through you, Chair, I did write a response on behalf of the board and was waiting to hear about your decision before I sent it in hopes that I'd be able to say, yes, we will absolutely do that. And within that letter, I did write on behalf of the board a deep, thankful message to Shelley.
Right now, are there any other questions or comments? I think at this point, we would be able to be all in favor of accepting Shelley's resignation, sending our eternal thanks, and also extending the ability of the motion to allow the organization to find a new representative. So all in favor? So that is, and thank you, Shelley, if you're watching, because I haven't been.
Freddie has
and
hand up.
there we go, Dorothy.
Oh, Dorothy has a question.
I think she was trying to.
Oh, sorry, I was just raising my hand in support.
Oh, great, thank you. All right, and so the next communication is correspondence from Autism Ontario regarding the committee, and it is a motion that Anil Thakur be appointed as the SEAC representative for Autism Ontario for the remainder of the 2022 to 2026 term. So we need a mover and seconder for that. So Trustee Clark and Trustee Benjamin, and is there any discussion?
Thank you. And through you, Chair, we did receive a second letter from Autism Ontario indicating that Ray, who we're happy to see here today, would be the substitute.
So any discussion, or do we can just move forward then? And thank you for being present, Ray. So all in favor of that? And that is accepted and passed. So I don't believe that Chair's request for written questions. I don't believe there's anything there. So reports from representatives on councils and associations. Are you start kicking this off?
Do you want me to do this next month? So later.
It is late.
Or I can just go really fast.
Through you, Chair, we do have a really light agenda next month, so we could do both your organization and another one if we'd like to, because I'd like to give an opportunity for everybody, but I would need for the chair to get that approved, but that works with us. We do have a very light agenda in December.
Yeah, so if we can move that to the next meeting, that would be great. So, motion to move that to the next meeting so that we can wrap up really quickly.
And whoever wants to volunteer, I can help them put it together for the other person.
Do you have slides?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's daunting. Okay, so do we need a mover and seconder for that, or to move that into December, or is it just processing? Pardon me? Okay, so we're deferring that to December. There you go. So questions asked of it by committee members, no committee member motions for considerations. There's nothing on the agenda. No, this is of motions, petitions. I don't think there's anything. So, and the motion action ones. Where's that with the motion action? It's sad that it's always at the end.
Thank you, Chair. Wanted to share the question from our October 2025 SEAC around how many EAs have access to learning modules, how many spaces are in each of the sessions, and are EAs getting access to the required learning. So based on approximately 2,300 EAs we have in the following groups, permanent 1,000, LTO 300, and supplied casual 1,000. So that makes up the 2,300. We have module 1, partners in learning, has not been released yet as we are just finalizing that document. Module 2, observations to improve student learning. There's been 600 participants. Module 3, universal support for behavior, 600 participants. Module 4, inclusion and independence, 600 participants that can have access. Module 5, back care and lifting, 100 participants. Module 6, 100 participants, which is health and safety, and Module 7, which is CPI training, 200 participants. So yes, there are times that one training session will fill up quickly, but as the training date approaches, staff start to drop out and make changes in their PLD plans with their school admin. So some are required sessions and need to be renewed every 2 years, and others are optional. But most of the time, PLD trainings have available spaces for any last minute participant registration. So just want to pause to make sure that thoroughly answered the questions. Okay, perfect. Okay, and there was a question around the feedback from the notification to the questions since the last session. I think we presented this at the last SEAC, and Trustee Alps, who's again not here, asked for further clarification, but he does have this in writing, and he said I'm sure he would connect with me. So we worked diligently to create questions that reflected the needs of the board, staff, and community while remaining at a high, reasonable length for students. Extensive consultation took place, and many of the questions were consistent with those that were used in previous testing. So I wanted to share that feedback from Lynn, who was formerly on the call, to support continuity and comparability. So she did verify that many of the questions were the same. An email was sent to trustees through the research department in August prior to the surveys released to students in November to ensure that they were informed. And I shared feedback back with the research department that more meaningful opportunities for consultation during the development of the survey are being requested in the future. And we have 8 more questions for the motion action letter.
We're just going to keep into that. Because I think, as I recall, Trustee Alex was saying that we had requested to see the questions on the census before they went out. As opposed to so is that what we're hoping to move to?
So I think that he was asking on behalf of trustees. So not on behalf of SEAC was my understanding, but certainly could reiterate that SEAC would like to make sure that they also are consulted on the types of questions. We wouldn't go over, I don't think, question by question, but I think an overarching view of what the question makeup is, I can ask that.
Thank you very much. And we are at 9:17 at adjournment. If we could have a motion that the
SEAC. Through you, Chair, I did forget one piece of information I forgot to share, and I apologize. I was supposed to do it at 8, but I forgot. We're not adjourning 9:19. I'm hoping. So just wanted to update SEAC as to the chair, the application sent out for the empty SEAC chair that was created by Abilities to Work. We only had one or two applicants who met eligibility and in consultation with the chair and co-chair. We wanted to extend that application process to ensure that SEAC was actively, and I'm hoping everybody's going to actively look to community organizations that you think would fill the gaps that exist on our SEAC committee. So we're going to put the application back out till the end of December. The two current applicants will be considered as a part of the overall process, and then we will, make sure that we fill a chair that where the needs are based on kind of your input and advocacy. So we would ask that SEAC members, if you have organizations that meet the eligibility criteria, that you actively encourage them to apply, please. Thank you. Sorry.
And I should remember.
Yes.
We spoke about it today. So there is going to be a posting on the PDSB website. So if you do know of a community organization that would be good to have on the committee, please let them know, because I don't think a lot of people do know about it or check the website, because we would like to make sure that we have a broad array of representation. And now we have it adjourned. So now that it's like 9:18, can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Jen and trustee Benjamin, and all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much for your attention and for sticking with us today.